This is one I like. This is one I like because I studied for my dissertation. I did a lot of work on divine radiance and divine fire and storm imagery and clouds and stuff. So this is my world, which is funny because I remember when I was a kid thinking the Transfiguration is probably one of the most inscrutable gospels that we have. So Jesus takes his disciples, it's actually Peter, Andrew, James, and John, or sometimes just Peter, James, and John, up onto a high mountain, traditionally associated with Mount Tabor in Galilee. In fact, if you go there today, there's a little shrine to the Transfiguration, but it's not really named. And he glows. So I hope that glowing is now resonating with you because that's the promise of somebody who lives righteously, is that they will shine like stars. That's the promise of somebody who is sharing in the divine life, that they are radiant like the firmament. God's reflected glow off of Moses' face was a sign that Moses had this life-changing encounter with God. So Jesus glows, except in Matthew's gospel, Jesus glows from within. Unlike Moses, it's not the reflection. It's Jesus is a sharer of divine glory. In the ancient Near East in general, this is an aside, gods glowed, right? That was a sign that you were a deity, was that you could glow in the dark. And this, I use that language, it's a little crass, but it's actually, if you read the Epic of Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh starts to glow at one point in the middle of the night. But that's a different lecture. This is what's going on in the Transfiguration, though. We see Jesus the way God sees Jesus. The apostles see Jesus through God's eyes. So the fullness of Jesus' nature had been hidden, or at least not available to people who didn't have faith. But now, at least for the disciples who were with him, they get a view of Jesus through God's eyes. And there's a reaffirmation in Jesus' sonship. This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. The listen to him is the important part of that statement. The Father's will is fulfilled in Jesus, and the Father's will be fulfilled by anybody who listens, which the broader sense of that is to hear and act. It's not just that you hear. It's that you have a transformative hearing. You hear and act. Living like him fulfills the Father's will in us. Follow the gospel, Christians, and, follow the gospel, Jews who seek Christ, and you will glow the way Moses glowed. This is the promise that those first readers of Matthew's gospel would have heard, or at least the expectation that they would have heard, that Jesus has the same, he shares this divine quality that we've seen before, that in him it's refulgent, it's his own, it's something he shares with his Father, and that it's available to any of us who follow his authentic interpretation of God's commandments. This is the background that Matthew is putting in his presentation of the Transfiguration. So, again, we see Jesus as God sees him. That's the encounter. The transformation, I love Jesus' line, rise and do not be afraid. That's what will happen to the apostles, not immediately, but over time. Matthew doesn't give us a Pentecost account the way that Luke does. Matthew's gospel ends with the ascension. But we know that the gospel continues, and we know that the apostles go out and their work is characterized by very free speech, right? The Greek word there is parousia, which is pretty in-your-face speech, boldness, holy boldness. That begins, at least in Matthew's mind, that transformation happens as part of the Transfiguration. So the lesson then is if we listen to God, God will love in us what he loves in the Son. This is off from the 7th Eucharistic preface. It's one of my favorite Eucharistic prefaces in the Mass, that God will love in us what he loves in the Son. This is the promise of the Transfiguration. And this is the context that the church is giving us for this, or that Matthew gives us for this particular reading.